Good evening. Welcome in Gaelic, Céad Mille Fáilte. And my name is Gillian Cameron. Of course, everybody seems to know that already. And I'm going to tell some stories, some of my favorite stories tonight. I want this to be an ongoing thing. So if you hear some things that are familiar, I'm getting the familiar stuff out of the way first. A few words about storytelling. It's the oldest art form there is. By the way, this fellow is going to be in and out quite a bit. Say hello to Pangerbon, the misnamed orange cat. Any rate, storytelling is as old as humanity. It's one of the oldest arts. The idea of sitting and just talking and relating what happened and creating a fantasy and trying to understand the world through stories. It always bothers me when somebody looks at the Bible and they said, well, this is just mythology. Well, mythology is how we understand. And maybe it's not scientific, but scientific gives us facts. Folklore and mythology speak to the soul. And there is also something about the related story. I have said many times that facts mean nothing until they're put into a story. Now, before I begin the actual telling of stories, I wanted to mention a couple of people that are very dear to me that I hope will be coming on later. One is Lyle Cash, and the other is Faith Bryan. In the best of all possible worlds, I would have been with them tonight. Lyle was the director, and Faith was one of the stars of a film called Death and Bowling. And that was due to have its premiere at the ArcLight on Hollywood Boulevard this night. And because of the coronavirus, it was not canceled, it was postponed. But a postponement can be just as heartbreaking as a cancellation. And so, Lyle and Faith, if you're there, God bless you, and I'm thinking of you constantly. And Faith was supposed to be sleeping on that couch that's right on the other side of this light. So, didn't get to see you, but we will. In the future, we will. So, I'm leaning forward here. I want to start with one of my favorite stories, and because I am who I am, this is a very important story to me. When I first discovered and started dealing with the fact that I was trans, I wanted to find some meaning to it, and I wanted to find the advantage to it. Nobody does this just because they think it's a cool idea. At any rate, there is a story that I absolutely love, and it comes from Greek mythology. If you remember when you were in high school and you read Oedipus Rex and Antigone, you would have come across the soothsayer Tiresias. Now, the soothsayer, Tiresias, is always coming in and he's saying, don't do that, no, that, and he knows exactly what's going to happen. And of course, Oedipus and Creon and anybody else that comes his way says, oh yeah, you're just, this is fake news, and so forth. Well, anybody that was in the audience would have said, oh ye gods, don't, that's Tiresias talking, listen to him. And this is why. When Tiresias was a young man in the city of Thebes, he went out for a walk one day in the shadow of Mount Thyron. And as he was walking, he saw two snakes coupling in the grass. And so he took his staff and he killed one of the snakes, which is, of course, what we do. He killed the female snake, and he became a woman. Now, the first thing that went through his mind was, huh? The second thing that went through her mind was, oh, crap. I'm a woman. This is ancient Greece. We are chattel. We have no rights. We have no citizenship. Holy cow. What am I going to do? And the answer came to her, well, Since she was a man, she knew how to please a man, so she became a courtesan, a lady of negotiable affection, and she did quite well for herself for several years, and created a name for herself all through the Peloponnesus. Until one day, when she was quite old, she went for a walk again, and again saw two snakes coupling in the grass, and you'd have thought she'd have learned, but she took her staff and killed the male one, and now she was a man. An old man. And so, in disgust, he went home to purge his wardrobe. Meanwhile, there was a reign of toads over Thessaly. All through the outlying areas of Sparta, there were two-headed goats being born. There were hailstorms. There were thunderstorms. There were all kinds of things going on. And why? Because there was an argument between Hera and Zeus on Olympus. And Hera was letting him have it. She was saying, you and your mortal women, you can't keep it in your toga, can you? I mean, think about it. Danae, Leto, Europa. You turned into a bull for Europa. You never did anything like that for me. And of course, he's trying to be, he's Jupiter, he's Job, he's Zeus, jovial. So he's being, darling, don't worry about it. I mean, please, I'm just trying to keep these people happy. And it's just a job of work for me. Besides, I've got to make some heroes. Besides, though, you know as well as I do that women enjoy sex more than men. The reign of toads over Thessaly tripled, and she was about to let go on him when Zeus looked down from Olympus and he said, Tiresias, would you mind stepping up here for a minute? Tiresias looked up. All right, and so up he went to Olympus. And Zeus said, thank you so much, even though you didn't have a choice. We're having a bit of a discussion, and since you've been both a man and a woman, you're the best one to answer. Who enjoys sex more? Men enjoy it greatly, but women enjoy it 9 times more. Hera was livid. Oh, yeah, she said. Zap! And he was struck blind. And Zeus said, Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm blind. Well, yes, I understand that you're blind. Well, I'm blind. I came up here to help you, but now I'm blind. I understand. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do because when my wife does something, I can't undo it. Well, good. I'm blind. But I'll tell you what. I will give you a gift. I will extend your life 7 times that of a mortal human. Good, I'm blind. Well, I'll do even more. I can't give you back the sight in your eyes, but I will give you insight. You shall see the past. You shall see the present. You shall see the future. And so, Tiresias left Olympus and went back down to Thebes. And he went into the rest of Greek mythology to the point that even when Odysseus was trying to find his way back to Ithaca, he had to go to Hades and sacrifice a goat in order to get directions from Tiresias. And this is why he was held in such awe by the audiences in the Greek theater. He has been a man. He has been a woman. He knows the past. He knows the present. He knows the future. He knows more than the gods. And that is the story of Tiresias from Ovid's Metamorphoses and several other sources. And to me, that's very important, because what can we get out of our particular point of view in life? Now, let me see. Oh, I said my favorite stories. If you ask my daughters what I am, they will tell you I'm a 9-year-old. I may be a stately dowager here, but I also tend to enjoy vulgarity. And if any of you has ever read in the stories of the Arabian Nights, you're going to find a bit of vulgarity and some bawdiness and quite a lot of other things. One of my favorites is a not very well-known story that I am going to share with you right now. Abu Hassan was a Bedouin, and he had spent many, many years with his tribe in the desert. But the idea of roving and just constantly not having a roof over his head did not agree with him. And so he married a woman in Yemen, and he settled down in the town of Kokobah. After many happy years, Allah saw it fit to bring his wife home to him. And so he was a widower. He went out, and with the aid of a marriage broker, he found a bride, a beautiful young girl of 18, and of course he was 40 at this time. But she seemed pleased with him. There was a fine arrangement with her father, and Abu Hassan paid for the wedding banquet himself. Never had Kokobah seen such an amazing feat. There were 10 stuffed lambs, stuffed with honey and walnuts. There were more sherbets than anyone could ever have imagined, and peacock's tongues and lamb's eyes and honey and many, many, many other delicacies. And at the end of the feast, Abu Hassan, who had been eating and eating and eating, stood to address the audience, to address his guests. And as he stood, the contents of his feast shifted in his gut, and there issued forth a most calamitous, distressing, rock-shattering fart that had ever been heard by the inhabitants of Kokobah. It echoed through the halls of his house and out through the stables and into the street, where it knocked over a camel on the way. All of the guests sat dumbfounded, and Abu Hassan, amidst that silence, rose, went to his stable, picked up one of the horses that had just seemed to be only stunned and not dead, saddled it, and rode all night and all day through the desert until he came to Oman. And in Oman he took ship, and he sailed from the Arabian Peninsula across the ocean to the coast of Malabar in India, where, even though the king himself was not a believer, there were many Muslims in his employ. And he entered the army of that king, and soon rose through the ranks through his wisdom and acumen to be second in command only to the king. But ever in his mind there was a doubt, a thought. And one night, he put his affairs in order and sold his belongings, took ship, and sailed back to Oman. And when he reached port, he borrowed the robes of a dervish and bought a horse and rode all night and all day through the desert. And in the dead of night, he came back to Kokoba. And as he walked the streets, he felt the comfort and the familiarity of his town. Then he happened to pass a low window, and he heard a young girl's voice say, "Mother, can you tell me the day and hour of my birth? My friend is drawing up my horoscope." To which the mother replied, "Oh, my darling, do you not know? You were born upon the very day, nay, the very hour, no, the very minute of the great and prodigious fart of Abu Hassan." Abu Hassan turned from the window, and he said to himself, "If they're counting their days and their hours by it, they will never forget." He mounted his horse, rode back across the desert, rode back to Oman, took ship, sailed back to the Malabar coast, and there he lived long and honorably until Allah saw fit to take him from this world. I'll leave it to you to discern the meaning of that story. Now, I believe that stories have wisdom. I think also there's sometimes in amongst the wisdom is just silliness. In England, you have the Merry Men of Gotham, and the Merry Men of Gotham are all stupid. There is at least one story about them that could not figure out what this little creature was. It turned out to be a mole. Well, they decided that they didn't like it, so they bury it to get rid of it. In amongst Polish and Eastern European Jews, there are the stories about Chelm. And Chelm is a little town, a shtetl, where everybody is a few bricks short of a load. According to the story, when God made the world, he sent out two angels. One had a great big bowl of wisdom, and he gave a little wisdom to one person in each village, usually the rabbi, but most of the time the rabbi's wife. And there was an angel that went out with a great big bowl of stupidity. Unfortunately, around Chelm, there are a lot of hills, and the angel tripped. And so the stupidity went all over Chelm, which is why in Chelm, the people have a tendency to be stoop-shouldered and they have a flat forehead. Because if you ask them a question, they go, tell them the answer, they go, huh. So anyhow, a couple of Chelm stories. I mentioned there were hills. In one day, there was a man who was on his way to Krakow, and he happened to go through Chelm, and he saw the great big hill behind the city. And he said to a Chelmite, "You know something, did you ever notice you've got a great big boulder at the top of that hill? Someday that boulder is going to come loose, it's going to crush your town." And word spread. "Oh, we're going to lose our town. Look at that boulder. We've got to do something." And so they got ladders and pulleys and ropes, and they painstakingly pulled that boulder down the hill until it was about 4/5 of the way down, when a man on his way to Odessa came through. He said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, we're pulling the boulder down the hill so it doesn't roll over and crush the village." I said, "Why didn't you just push it the other way and let it roll?" And they said, "Oi, are we stupid?" So they dragged it back up the hill and pushed it. A later day, they decided they got tired of that hill. So all of the men of Helm went out and they decided that they were going to push that hill away. Every single one of them shoved their shoulder into the side of the hill. And it was hot work, so they all took off their jackets and they put them on a horse cart over here. And they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. Meanwhile, Ogoneff, a thief, happened to see that horse cart full of jackets. And so he jumped on, said, "Yeah!" and he started driving away. And one of the men turned and he saw the wagon getting smaller and smaller. And he said, "Keep pushing, man, we're making progress." And finally, there was a time when the rabbi and his students decided that they were going to go to a seminar. And so they came to a river where there was a ferry. And the ferry capsized and they all went into the river. And they swam to the side of the river. And the rabbi said to his chief student, "Mendel, how many of us were there?" "There were 9, Rabbi." "Mendel, count noses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. "Rabbi, there's only 8 of us." "Menachem, you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. "He's right. There's only 8 of us." Lavish, you count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. "Oh, Rabbi, he's right. We're missing somebody." And so they went back to Helm and they sat Shiva and said Kaddish. Had a wonderful funeral, but they could never figure out for whom. Now, I was given a request. I've been doing these for a long time. When my friend True Thomas and I do the Dickens Festival, I do some recitations, and they come from Stanley Holloway. They're the stories of a family in Lancashire, and they are called the Ramsbottoms, and they have about all the social graces, or actually fewer, than the Simpsons. And so these are, the first one starts with Albert and his encounter with a lion. There's a famous seaside place called Blackpool that is noted for fresh air and fun. And Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom went there with young Albert, their son. Now a grand little lad with young Albert, all dressed in his best, quite a swell, with stick with an horses at handle, the finest that Woolworths did sell. Now they didn't think much to the ocean, the waves they was fiddling and smart. There was no wrecks and nobody drowning, in fact nothing to laugh at all. So seeking for further amusement, they paid and went into it zoo, where they'd lions and tigers and camels, and old ale and sandwiches too. There were one great big lion called Wallace, whose nose was all covered with scars, and he lay in a somnolent posture with the side of his face against bars. Now Albert had heard about lions, and they was ferocious and wild, and see Wallace lying so peaceful, that didn't seem right to the child. So quickly the brave little fella, displaying no morsel of fear, took stick with the horses at handle and shoved it in Wallace's ear. You could see that the lion didn't like it, for giving a sort of a roll, he pulled Albert inside the cage with him and swallowed little lad all. Now Pa, who had seen the occurrence and didn't know what to think next, said, "Mother, yon lion's at Albert." And Mother says, I am vexed." So Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom, quite rightly when all said and done, complained to the animal keeper that lion had eaten their son. Now the keeper was quite nice about it. He said, "What a nasty misser. Are you sure that it's your lad he's eating?" Pa says, "Am I sure? There's his cap." Ma says, "That's right, young fella. I think it's a shame and a sin for lion to go and eat Albert, and after we paid to come in." Well, the manager had to be sent for. He came in, he says, "What's to do?" Pa says, "Your lion's at Albert, and him in his Sunday clothes too." The manager wanted no trouble. He took out his purse right away, saying, "How much to settle the matter?" Pa says, "What you usually pay." But Mother had turned rather awkward. When she thought of where Albert had gone, she said, "No, someone's got to be summoned." So that was decided upon. So off they went to police station in front of the magistrate chap. They told him what happened to Albert and proved it by showing his cap. The magistrate gave his opinion that no one was really to blame, and he said that he hoped the Ramsbottoms would have further sons to their name. Oh, at this Mother got proper blazing. "And thank you so kindly," says she. "Would spend all my life raising children to feed ruddy lions, not me." Thank you for indulging me on that. And Rob, a.k.a. True Thomas, that one was for you. Now, I said songs. Well, it's going to be song, but I jokingly said the other day that I'd tried singing a Scottish ballad while I was washing my hands, and the water rate went up by about 300%, and I still couldn't get the wrinkles out of my fingers. The Scots call these the mickle songs. They tend to be a little long. But the important thing is that they tell a story. This is one of my favorite ballads. Now, my mate True will tell you this. Don't have any truck with fairies if you don't have to. They're not from around here. They're not like you and me. They don't know what cheese is. So, this is a song not about Tinkerbell. Also, I should say there is some adult content. Not quite. And a few things that are not quite. This is the thing when you start dealing with folklore. Things are not always quite as politically correct as they might be. Thank goodness. So, as soon as I can get the cattail out from in front of me, here he is. By the way, Pangerbon means white fuller. I didn't know that when I named him, and so that's why I've got the misnamed orange striped tabby. This is called Tamlin. Lady Margaret's a sewing of the seam. She's all dressed in black, and the thought comes to her mind she'd run into her woods, get flowers to flower her hat, get flowers to flower her hat. So she's hoisted up her petticoats a bit above the knee, so nimbly she's run o'er the plain, and when she's come to the merry green woods, she's pulled the branches down, she's pulled the branches down, and suddenly she spies a fine young man stood underneath the trees. How dare you pull the branches down without the leave of me, lady, without the leave of me? Says she, this little wood, it is my very own. My father give it me, and I can pull the branches down without the leave of thee, young man, without the leave of thee. Oh, he's taken her by the lily white hand, and by the grass green sleeve, and he's lain her down at the foot of a bush, and he's never once asked her leave her leave. No, he's never once asked her leave. Oh, and when they had done, she turns herself around to ask her true love's name, but she nothing heard and nothing saw, and all the woods grew dim, dim, and all the woods grew dim. Oh, there's 24 ladies all in the hall, all red as any rose, excepting for young Margaret, and green as grass she grows, oh, green as grass she grows. And up and spoke the first servant maid, Oh, she lifted her head and smiled. Oh, I think our lady's loved too long, and now she goes with child, with child. Oh, now she goes with child. And up and spoke the second servant maid. However, and alas, says she, I think I know a herb in the merry green woods will twine the babe from thee, lady, will twine the babe from thee. Oh, Margaret's taken up her silver comb, made haste to comb her hair, and she's away to the merry green woods as fast as she can tear, oh, as fast as she can tear. And she hadn't pulled that herb in the merry green woods, that herb but barely one, when by her come young Tamlin, saying, Margaret, leave it alone, alone, Margaret, leave it alone. Oh, how can you pull that bitter little herb, that herb that grows so grey, for to take away our sweet babe's life that we got in our play, that we got in our play. Oh, tell me the truth, young Tamlin, she says, if an earthly man you be, I will tell you no lies, Lady Margaret, she says. I was christened the same as thee, lady, I was christened the same as thee, but on a cold and a bitter morn, as from a horse I fell, the Queen of Elfland, she took me in yonder green wood to dwell, oh, yonder green wood to dwell. But tonight it is the Halloween, and the elfin court do ride, and if you would your own true love win, by the old mill bridge you must bide, by the old mill bridge you must bide. And first will come the black horse, and then will come the brown, and then at last the white. You must hold me fast and fear me not, and I will not you affright, oh, I will not you affright. Then they will turn me all in your arms, into many a beast so wild. You must hold me fast and fear me not. I'm the daughter of father of your child, I'm the father of your child. Now Margaret's taken up her silver comb, made haste to comb her hair, and she's away to the old mill bridge as fast as she can tear, as fast as she can tear. And in the dead hour of the night she heard the harness ring, and oh, that sound it thrilled her blood more than any mortal thing, more than any mortal thing. And first come by the black horse, and then come by the brown, and then at last the white, and she held him fast and feared him not, and he did not her affright, oh, he did not her affright. And the thunder rolled across the skies, and the stars they shone like day, and the Queen of Elfland gave a thrilling cry, oh, young Tamlin's away, away, oh, young Tamlin's away. And first they have changed him all in her arms to a lion that roared so wild, but she held him fast and feared him not. He was the father of her child, she knew he was the father of her child. And next they have changed him all in her arms into a loathsome snake, but she held him fast and feared him not. He was one of God's own make, he was one of God's own make. And last they have changed him all in her arms into a naked man, and she's flung her mantle over him, crying out, my love, I've won, crying out, my love, I've won. And up and spoke the Queen of Elfenland in the bush wherein she stood, oh, I should have plucked out thine eyes, Tamlin, put into eyes of wood, put into eyes of wood. Tamlin. That's from the Child collection and many other collections of ballads. That's how we used to tell stories. It's wonderful for remembering all the words, even though I screwed up a couple times. I'm going to tell one more story, and this is probably one of my very, very favorite story. If you've been following Calogrenant, you know that I absolutely love the Arthurian legend. That bookcase is right behind me. The second and actually it's the third and fourth shelves are all King Arthur books. Now this particular story shows up in a lot of incarnations. It's also, I call it, and it has been called, Sir Gawain and the Loathly Lady, Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell. Chaucer, for Chaucer, it is the wife of Bath's Tale. And there are a lot of different variations of it. And the thing about telling stories is that they grow in the telling. I don't memorize stories the way I would memorize a song. And what I do is I imagine them and then familiarize myself with the shape of the story. But when I find them in a book or I hear somebody else tell it, I will not tell their story. I will tell my story that may be based on their framework. That way, it's mine. And so there are details here that you probably won't find in Chaucer or in other variants. But I love them all. And again, I'll thank you once more, but thank you all for coming. I can't see clearly. I can't see my phone from here. I can see there's some watching me. I have no idea how many. But I hope you're enjoying this. And if you want, I would love to do this again. Maybe on a more regular basis. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing fireworks over there on the side. Well, bless you. All right then. I have to say it. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. There are those who say that Arthur's court is in the south, in Camelot, which might have been near Glastonbury in Cornwall, not Cornwall, in Devon, in Dorset, Somerset. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Let's start this. Let's just start with a story. Arthur's court, according to those that know, was in Carlisle, up in the north. And it was New Year's time at Carlisle. And the knights of the Round Table, all of them, and their servants and squires and every man of that court went out to hunt the boar. The boar at that time in England stood 9 hands at the shoulder, with huge tusks that could disembowel a horse at a touch. You did not hunt the boar on horseback. You hunted the boar on foot. And you had a long spear with a crosspiece about a third of the way down. And that crosspiece was there to keep the boar from running up the spear and disemboweling you. Arthur, who very much wanted to join in the hunt, but could not because he was the king and he must be safe, sat upon his horse, Cavall, and in his leather hunting togs, watching on a hillside the black shapes running across the white hills of Carlisle. But out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glint of gold. And he saw a miracle, the white hart, a white stag, pure white with antlers of gold, and a crown worn as a collar around its neck. This was a very special animal. This is the king's prey, for the hart is the king, and the king is the hart. The prey and the hunter are one. And Arthur spurred his steed and galloped after that deer. and the deer bounded into the black woods. Arthur galloped, dodging trees, and every so often catching a glimpse of white hide or golden antler against the black of the trees. The hart bounded into a clearing, but in that clearing, Arthur found no deer. He found a knight upon a huge black charger, and the knight himself in jet black armor with a beard axe at his knee. His visor was open and his eyes shone red within, and his voice echoed through the clearing. "Well met, Arthur Pendragon. Know you that my name is Sir Gramont Sommerjour? You have taken my lands from me, and you have given them unto your nephew, Sir Gawain of Orkney. For that you shall die." Arthur sat, unflinching, unfearing. "Right was I to take thy lands from thee, Gramont Sommerjour. You have ever proved yourself, and so you prove yourself now, to be unworthy of the vows that you took as a knight. Would you kill me as I am, unarmed, with only my leather hunting togs? You have no chivalry, sir." The eyes glowed within the helm, but they softened. "I give you your life, Arthur Pendragon. I will give you even more. Come to this clearing in a year and a day, and I shall give you the gift of your life. But you must answer a question that I shall propose to thee." "And what question would that be?" said Arthur. "What is it in all the world that women desire most?" Then he shut his helm and he galloped from the clearing. And Arthur returned to Carlisle, and he sat there at the round table. Now, the round table, many of us think is solid, but it was not. It was circular, so that Arthur sat at one end of it, but an opening was at the other end, so that the servants could come and serve the food, and so that a person might come and address the entire court. Arthur stood while all the knights and ladies sat at their New Year's repast. He said, "My lords, I have a question. My life depends upon it." All fell silent to hear this. "What is it in all the world that women desire most?" The men stared only into their meat. They could not answer that question. But the women, to a one of them, since they knew that they were not being asked the question, smiled to themselves, including the queen, who sat next to the king, and she said, "Stew in it." Arthur said, "Very well then, I must go forth. I have but a year and a day for my life, and I must discover the answer to this question." Then up stood the first maid of all of Arthur's knights, his nephew, Gawain of Orkney. He stood and he addressed all present. "My liege, it is not fitting that a king should go forth." He was Scots, you know. "It is not fitting that a king should go forth and leave his country all ungoverned. Nay, give that task to me. I shall ride forth this very day and discover that which women desire most in all the world." And so it was that Sir Gawain mounted his horse Gringolet, in his armor and with his shield that had a picture of a 5-pointed star on one side and the Virgin and Child on the other, rode forth from Carlisle And he rode. He rode throughout all of Britain. From Land's End to Gravesend he rode. He rode from the Isle of Wight all the way up to his father's land in Orkney. Took ship and went there himself. And every person he asked, every person he met, he asked this question: what is it in all the world that women desire most? But none could give him an answer which in his heart of hearts he knew to be true. And so he took ship and sailed across the channel. He rode from Elsinore to Byzantium, and every person he met, he propounded the question, what is it in all the world that women desire most? And many were the answers he received. Some said youth, some said children, some said beauty, some said a rich husband, some said a rich dead husband. But in his heart of hearts, he knew that none of this was true. And so with a heavy heart, and knowing that he had disappointed his king, he returned to Britain. And within a day's ride of Carlisle, he found himself, though he did not know it, in the self-same clearing wherein Arthur had encountered Sir Grummer Somerjour. It was empty, except for what seemed to be the stump of a tree. But as he rode past that stump, it moved, and it took shape, and became a woman, the most hideous woman that anyone has ever seen. One eye hung down upon her cheek, and the other was pushed in so far that a heron could not have plucked it out. She had, instead of breasts, empty bags that hung down to her knees. She had 4 teeth in her mouth, which was 4 more than hairs she had in her head. And her cheeks were yellow with pimples. And she looked up at him and she said, "Well met, Sir Gawain of Orkney. I know your quest." Where are you? Oh, there you are. "I know your quest. You would know what it is that women desire most in all the world." And Sir Gawain said, Oh, good woman, good woman. Aye, that is true. For the life of my king, can you answer that question? "I can give you the answer, but I must ask a boon." "Oh, my king is a good and honourable king. If you were to answer that question, then he would give you whatever it was you asked." "Very well, then. That which women desire most in all the world is total dominion over their husbands and lovers." Now that may be false, that may be true. Total dominion and obedience from their husbands and lovers. But in the story, he knew that it was the truth. And so he rode a gallop back to Carlisle and burst through the doors and into the center of the round table, and on his knees he said, "My liege, that which women desire most in all the world is total sovereignty, dominion over their husbands and lovers." Arthur stood and he said, "I thank you, Sir Gawain. What women desire most is total sovereignty and dominion." And he turned and looked at the Queen. And the Queen had never before seen such lovely tapestries. Have you ever noticed how lovely these tapestries? And as each knight turned to his lady, each of the ladies said, "Yes, they are indeed lovely, aren't they?" But the king had no time for that. He ran to his horse and mounted and rode to that clearing. And there was Sir Grummar Samorjour mounted in that same armor, on that same black steed, with the same beard axe. Well met, Arthur Pendragon. I see that you return. Have you the answer to my question? That which women desire most in all the world is total dominion and sovereignty over their husbands and lovers. Sir Grummar Samorjour's eyes blazed within the helm, and his voice echoed throughout the woods. Have you been talking to my sister? For indeed, that hideous woman that Sir Gawain met in the woods was his sister Ragnell, but that's another story that we're not going to go into right now. He shut his helmet and whirled his steed, and as he galloped from the clearing, his voice echoed, May the devil have your soul, Arthur Pendragon. Arthur returned to the court, and there was such rejoicing and carousing. There were jongleurs, there were jugglers, there were minstrels, there was a storyteller, because I know I was there, and it was boisterous and loud and full of music and hautboys and sackbuts until there was silence as the doors opened and a figure hobbled to the center of the round table and looked up at the king, and she said, Right glad I am to... Where'd you go? There you are. Glad I am to see you are alive, Arthur Pendragon. But know you, I was promised a boon for that answer. And Arthur stood, and gracious, and he said, Good woman, I am grateful to you. You have given me my life. You shall have whatever it is you ask. Very well, then. I will have the hand of Sir Gawain in marriage. 10 brave knights fainted dead upon the spot. But Sir Gawain, remembering his promise, stood, and he said, My liege, it's true. I did tell this lady that she should have anything she wanted, that ye'd grant it. And if she would have me to husband, so be it. Never was there a wedding of more woe performed in all the realm of Britain by king or bishop than the wedding of Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell. Where there should have been cheers, there was weeping. Where there should have been laughter, there was weeping. Where there should have been toasts to her maidenhead, there was weeping. And at the wedding feast, the bride devoured on her own 4 roast boar with her one tooth. And when all that was done, she leapt over the table and ran out to the courtyard, and all and sundry heard a muffled and she returned to the table, wiping blood, wool, and green drool from her chin. And she smiled up at Sir Gawain, and she said, I would go to our wedding chamber. Sir Gawain swallowed his gorge and took her by the claw, and when he led her from the great hall, none could bear to look. And that night, as Gawain stood by the bed, untying the belt of his silken robe, he looked down upon his new bride, lying there in bed, her silk peignoir covering all but a few of the thick black hairs that grew between her withered breasts. And she smiled up at him and wiped a bit of green drool from her chin, and she said, "Give me a kiss, my love." Sir Gawain drew upon all of his courage as a knight. He closed his eyes and he kissed her full upon her green and slimy lips. And when he opened his eyes, the most beautiful lady that ever he had seen lay there before him. And she smiled and she said, "My love, Gawain, know you that a curse was laid upon me, that I should be as I was, until a knight of his own free will should wed me and kiss me." And Sir Gawain said, "Well, that's absolutely, but you must make a choice, my husband. Would you have me as I am during the day, so that all might see me, and as I was at night when we share our bed? Or would you have me as I am at night and as I was during the day?" Sir Gawain thought about this a long time. And he said, "My lady wife, that is not my choice to make. Nay, I give that choice to you. You decide, and I shall abide by your wishes." "Well, have you chosen, my husband? For with that choice, you have broken the curse completely, and I shall be as I am before you now, and loving and loyal to you for the rest of my days. For you have given me that which women desire most in all the world. And I want to thank everyone here. And like I said, I have no idea how many of you are still here, but I want to thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the stories and the song. And please let me know. And if you'd like me to do this again fairly soon, I would be glad to. I had so much fun. Good night. Sleep well. Stay healthy.